There are places in the universe where chaos reigns, where galaxies collide in incandescent rage, where quasars spill jets of plasma across intergalactic gulfs, where the very fabric of space trembles under the pull of black holes. Astronomers spend lifetimes listening to that cosmic uproar, tuning satellites to the hiss of microwave radiation, to the crackle of radio storms, to the ghostly hum left behind by the birth of time itself. But every so often, in the deepest maps of the sky, the universe answers not with thunder, but with silence. It began as an ordinary survey, a sweep conducted across the great cosmic web, that sprawling lattice of filaments believed to be sculpted from dark matter. To the human eye, it is invisible, but to the instruments watching from orbit and desert plateaus, its outline reveals itself through the faintest of signals, whispers of hydrogen, relics of cosmic rays, the patient crackling of atoms warmed by ancient starlight. The mission was simple: to listen for those whispers across one of the longest stretches of intergalactic space ever charted. Instead, the instruments heard nothing, not a drop of heat, not a trace of ionized gas, not even the thin, drifting residue of the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang that bathes every corner of existence. It was as if a chunk of the universe had chosen to remain unborn. The array operators assumed the obvious: equipment failure, a corrupted sensor bank, a miscalibrated receiver. Space is noisy. Silence is not to be trusted. The data was reset. The sweep was repeated. The algorithms scrubbed. Still, the silence persisted. Other observatories were called in, from Chile's Atacama Plateau to South Africa's Karoo Desert. Dishes aligned. Frequencies tested. Interference purged. Across every observable wavelength. Nothing. There, between two colossal galactic superclusters, in a volume vast enough to engulf hundreds of Milky Ways, sat a region so mute that even gravity seemed reluctant to disturb it. No halos of dark matter could be confirmed. No gas clouds floated in suspension. No shock waves of ancient star formation left their fingerprints. It was not just absence. It was defiance. Even the cosmic microwave background, the oldest light in the universe, should have seeped through it. Yet spectral analysis suggested that the radiation curve itself bent around the void, as though the space inside refused to be touched. This was not a silence of decay. It was a silence older than creation. The earliest models proposed it might be a statistical anomaly, a cold spot produced by quantum randomness in the Big Bang's infancy. But its borders were too sharp. Its uniformity is too disciplined. No known process in the standard model of cosmology could account for such a region, remaining untouched for over 13 billion years. The silence became louder than any signal. Meetings turned to debates. Debates turned to doubt. Avoid this absolute, this ancient, should have been impossible. The cosmic web was shaped by gravity pulling matter into filaments and clusters. Emptiness existed, yes, but emptiness is never quiet. Radiation always crosses the dark. So why had this region refused to echo back? Somewhere between fear and fascination, the first hypothesis emerged: quiet not as emptiness, but as memory, a relic state of the universe before light, before stars, before even hydrogen felt the touch of ionization. A surviving pocket of the cosmic dark ages, preserved like a fossil from a time when existence itself had yet to burn. If true, this was not merely a hole in the cosmos. It was a window into the era before illumination, a fragment of reality where ignition had never come. And so, a single question rose among those who had spent their lives listening to the sky. How could silence this ancient have survived the birth of light? The mystery did not roar into history. It whispered. It lingered. It waited, not for discovery, but for acknowledgement. For the first time in the age of astronomy, it was not what the universe said that mattered. It was what it refused to say. The silence did not retreat. It deepened out with every reanalysis, every cross-verified frequency sweep. The void grew not darker, but more defined, not as a hole in space, but as an ancient decision. A refusal to participate in cosmic history. Data from radio arrays and microwave observatories was fed backward through time, reconstructing temperature fluctuations and particle densities from the epoch before stars ignited. The silence matched no known structure in any simulation, no galactic remnant, no low-density void, no statistical aberration in the cosmic microwave. Background dot, it aligned instead with a far earlier era, the cosmic dark ages, a time after the Big Bang's fire had faded, but before the first stars had kindled. Space was filled with nothing but neutral hydrogen. No starlight, no reionization, no heat beyond the soft afterglow of creation cooling toward darkness. A universe is waiting, yet even that ancient quiet should not have survived. When the first generations of stars were born, massive, short-lived titans, their ultraviolet radiation tore through the hydrogen fog, reionizing it, lighting the voids, reshaping the darkness into transparency. None of the early silence was meant to remain, and yet, here it was, pristine, untouched, preserved in defiance, a fossil of stillness from the age before illumination. But fossils do not maintain themselves. Something must hold them together. That was where the paradox began. If matter had existed inside this region, gas, dust, even cold dark matter, it would have gravitationally clumped over billions of years, bending and warping light from background galaxies. Yet deep field imaging showed no measurable gravitational lensing. Photons passed through without distortion. No curvature, no warping, as though nothing mass-bearing lay within. But if there was no matter, what held the structure and shape? Cosmologists ran simulations of ultra-low-density voids. Even the emptiest regions in their models eventually filled with wandering intergalactic gas, or were heated by the radiation spillover from neighboring galaxies. But this silent zone betrayed no such scars. Asterisk, no thermal leakage, no ionization glow, no spectral fingerprints of nearby stellar winds. Asterisk, it sat in perfect isolation, as though the expansion of space had stretched a single fragment of primordial darkness. Beyond contamination, a bubble sealed off before history began, yet even emptiness. True emptiness is expected to hum. Quantum field theory predicts that even the vacuum should flicker with activity, fluctuations of virtual particles, magnetic ripples, primordial relic fields from the infancy of time. But the sensitive magnetometers aboard orbital probes detected none. No trace of faint magnetic structuring. No whispers of ancient plasma filaments. Nothing. Not silence as a lack of noise. Silence as a rejection of physical law. For the first time in decades, the foundations of cosmology wavered. The Standard Model, the great consensus describing how hydrogen became stars, how gravity shaped filaments, how radiation seeded complexity, found itself staring at a contradiction it had no language for. If this silence was truly from before the dawn, why had every other relic from that epoch been erased, yet this survived unscathed? Theories fractured like ice. Some proposed that this was a failed galaxy cluster, a region whose density had been too low to spark even a single star. A cosmic womb that never experienced birth. But even failed clusters retain dark matter scaffolds, and this one appeared to have none. Others argued for primordial black holes, remnants from the earliest instabilities in spacetime itself, feeding without emitting, devouring structure in perfect stealth. But the gravitational footprint of such entities would still announce itself. No such footprint appeared. A more radical suggestion crept from the edges of theoretical physics. Asterisk. What if silence was not absence, but exclusion? Asterisk. What if this region was not simply empty, but sealed? Researchers began to map its boundaries not by signals coming from within, but by how signals from beyond changed upon crossing. Background microwaves shifted phase at the edges. Ultra-high-energy cosmic rays bent, not inward, but away. Like birds deflecting from an invisible cliff, the cosmic web, that great lattice believed to be static, gravitationally sculpted, obedient to universal law, began to look less like a structure and more like a membrane. What if the universe was not a continuous field, but partitioned? What if the silence was not a void, but a boundary? A boundary not between galaxies, but between eras. Not a scar of destruction, but a sanctuary of untouched time dotted at the edge of the silent zone. Radiation trembled as though approaching a frontier where history had not yet begun, a place where light had never been invited, and for the first time, astronomers faced a possibility as unsettling as it was profound. Perhaps the universe did not expand uniformly into itself. Perhaps some parts never joined the story at all. Perhaps there are places where time refuses to awaken. Silence, in physics, is never empty. But this silence might be alive. The silence had been identified, mapped, defined. Yet despite being measured in coordinates and wavelengths, it remained no less impenetrable. A region of space so old it seemed to predate participation in the universe itself, refusing light, refusing gravity, refusing even decay. But still, the listening intensified. The next phase was not passive observation. It was an interrogation. Across 3 continents and beyond Earth's sky, instruments awoke with renewed purpose. The square-kilometer array spread its vast metal petals across the deserts of South Africa and Australia, synchronizing millions of radio sensors to scan the void at frequencies lower than any previous human attempt. The James Webb Space Telescope, perched in its silent halo around the Sun-Earth L2 point, extended its golden gaze into infrared territory, hoping to detect even the faintest glow of scattered dust adrift in that silence. Above them all, experimental interferometer constellations, orbiting pairs and trios of synchronized satellites, stretched laser links across tens of thousands of kilometers, watching for phase shifts not from incoming waves, but from their absence, for the void refused to speak. So they began listening for its recoils. Every measurement was inverted. Instead of asking, what does it emit? They asked, what does it resist? Instead of what is present, they charted what is forbidden from entering. And from those absences, theories began to crystallize. In this scenario, the silent region was not anomalous, merely left behind. A pocket of space-time that had expanded just quickly enough in the infant universe to isolate itself from the turbulent epoch of reionization. When the first stars tore electrons from atoms and flooded the cosmos with radiation, every other void in the universe had absorbed some fraction of that light. This one, perhaps by cosmic accident, had slipped away before it could be ignited. It would be older than heat. A region still frozen in the conditions of 380,000 years after the Big Bang, when the cosmic microwave background first emerged. A place where the dawn of stars simply never arrived. But even in this picture, problems remain. Expansion alone should not shield against all. Some radiation, gravitational, electromagnetic, or quantum, should have entered over billions of years. Yet the silence held in the landscape of string theory and higher dimensional physics. Our universe is not singular, but one of countless brains, floating in an unseen dimensional ocean. If another universe briefly pressed against ours in the early moments of existence, the collision could have left shadows, regions where the interference patterns of both spacetimes overlapped, canceling out all signals. Not destruction, not absence, suppression, like two waves meeting perfectly out of phase, erasing each other. In this view, the void was not empty. It was occupied, not by matter, but by foreign order. A spillover of physical law that did not belong to our universe, muting all interaction. But that theory led to an even more disquieting proposal. In the earliest moments of the cosmos, long before inflation unfolded space, the quantum fields that birthed existence may have produced countless attempts at universes. Some inflated, some collapsed, some evaporated before gaining coherence. But what if their remnants remained? Not as matter, not as energy, as conditions. Frozen patches of proto-realities, bubbles that nearly became universes, but did not earn ignition. They would possess no stars, no time, no motion, only stillness. The silent region, in that interpretation, was not a void within our universe. It was the boundary between worlds where existence was accepted and worlds where it was denied. If true, cosmology would no longer be a narrative of inevitability of atoms, stars, and galaxies forming in ordained sequence. It would be a story of selection, of cosmic preference. Not all regions were permitted to ignite. Some were turned away. Faced with hypotheses bordering on the metaphysical, the scientific response was simple and characteristically bold. They attempted conversation. Transmitters aboard deep space relays were slaved to experimental ultra-low frequency generators, designed to push signals not through the void, but into it, not with force, but with patience. Waves longer than galaxies were whispered into that silence, so extended they could not be reflected by matter, so gentle they would not scatter on dust. The silence accepted them. Seconds passed, minutes, hours. Then, faintly, not a sound, a delay. The signal returned not as static, not as distortion, but elongated, stretched as though dragged across an immense gravitational well. Yet no mass lay within. Gravity without matter, curvature without source. Time, inside that region, ran differently. Not slower, not faster, simply apart. As though the void were holding itself together, not through structure, but through decision. Silence was not the absence of interaction. Silence was resistance to participation. In that moment, silence ceased to be interpreted as failure. It became my intention. Not the void of space between stars, but the pause between possibilities. The universe was no longer singularly unfolding. It was an orchestra, and some instruments had chosen not to play. And in that refusal lay a mystery more profound than any sound could offer. For centuries, humanity assumed the universe was born in fury, a grand explosion followed by endless noise. Radiation, turbulence, collision. Everywhere the telescopes turned, there was movement, heat. The imprint of violence. Yet now, after all the frequencies have been scanned and all the signals catalogued, the oldest relic ever found is not light. It is silence. Not silence as absence. Not silence as failure. Silence as memory. In that mute region, that untouched island of pre-cosmic CALM, lies the first structure the universe ever formed. Not a star, not a galaxy, not even a particle bound to another. The first enduring shape was stillness, a refusal to ignite, and everything that came after, every flash of starlight, every spiral of nebula, every eruption of fusion, was interruption. All of creation, set against a background that never asked to awaken. Civilization spent its youth listening for signals, for beacons of intelligence, for the roar of quasars, for the hum of particles colliding in deep time. It waited for messages carved in light, But perhaps the truest message was carved in quiet dot in that ancient dark. The cosmos reveals not its power, but its restraint. A place that could have burned but did not. A region that could have echoed but remained still. Physicists, once trained to seek disruption, now find themselves contemplating refusal. If matter is defined by attraction and energy by motion, then what defines that which rejects both? The equations bend around the question. Gravity is not absent, yet it does not pull. Time is not frozen, yet it does not flow like ours. There is rhythm, but no crescendo. Pattern, but no pulse dot. It is not lifeless dot, it is unlived. Perhaps, long before stars decided to ignite, the universe offered a choice, not consciously, but fundamentally, to flare into motion or to remain unaltered. Most of existence chose to burn. Most of space surrendered to illumination. But a few regions may have quietly declined, not all beginnings demand continuation, not all possibilities seek to manifest. The silent sector stands now as metaphor, not of death, but of discipline. A boundary not between force and weakness, but between participation and abstention. It asks a question more ancient than gravity. Asterisk, is existence measured by what erupts, or by what resists? Cosmology, once a science of inevitability, where hydrogen must become stars, stars must become iron, iron must become life, now acknowledges that inevitability is an illusion. The universe is not a foregone conclusion. It is a negotiation. Perhaps that region is the record of the first refusal. And if silence is this ancient, what does it remember? Does it hold the shape of a reality that never unfolded? Could it be that it is not past but alternative? A state of being that did not lose, but simply did not compete. Galaxies, with all their brilliance and fury, may not be the default outcome of physics. They may be the rebellion, the loud answer to a question most of the universe declined to answer. If so, then every sun burning across the sky is not proof of dominance, but proof of deviation. Most of reality may have preferred quiet, and suddenly, everything changes in interpretation. Life is no longer the inevitable child of matter. It is the improbable whisper in a cathedral of hush. Civilization, with its restless ambition, is not the center of narrative. It is the brief flare of a match struck in a cave that mostly preferred darkness. The silent void does not condemn that flame, but it does contextualize it. It reminds me that noise is not permanent, that brightness is not certain. All light fades, but silence, true silence, can wait forever. So the script does not end with resolution. It does not claim triumph or terror. It ends as the void begins, with reflection. If silence can exist unchanged across cosmic epochs, older than stars, older than gravity wells, older even than heat, then silence is not weakness. Silence is will. And so, the final questions linger not as doubts, but as invitations. If stillness this ancient remains intact, does it remember a version of the universe that never chose to shine? Is every galaxy, every star, every living world merely one potential answer, while most of existence remains silent by choice? And if so, what does that say about the nature of awakening? About the cost of burning? The oldest silence still lingers, not as emptiness, but as a memory older than sound. It does not ask to be broken. It does not beg to be known. It waits, patient and eternal. The cosmos is not waiting to speak. It is asking if anyone is willing to listen.